Okay, so my name is Abidemi Agwor. My background is in geology engineering, but I've got an expertise in tunneling and underground space development. I currently work with multiple organizations, but I do run a consultancy that works with emerging cities in Africa. And what we do essentially is infrastructure related in terms of dedicated infrastructure that has to do with exploring underground space use for mobility, transportation, utility, storage as well. So I work with cities at the early stages to explore opportunities where the urban fabric of the city can explore values below on surface. So essentially for me, it was a case of identifying a gap that I had. So I'd done a kind of like career gap analysis or more like skill set gap analysis. And I did find out that there were certain key skills that I lacked amongst, the different experiences that I have, about 2 decades worth of experience developing infrastructure. But I will say the greater percentage of that in Europe, as I've been resident in Europe for a long time. And I'd explored different opportunities. I'd attended executive master's programs at the London School of Economics, where I did strategic policy and strategic planning for cities. But then there was just that gap, and I needed something that would allow me accelerate my knowledge, or basically bridge that knowledge gap within a short period of time. And I kind of like felt like the DFID IP program fitted perfectly into that, and it pretty much covered all the scope of the program, spoke to the different gaps that I had seen in terms of my career, gaps I had in my career. So things that had to do with finance, had to do with an analysis of how to bridge the different the different risks that you would normally face, especially with regards to approaching some of these infrastructural, setting up these infrastructural frameworks in developing countries as well. And the context of it, the fact that he was looking at Africa was perfect for me. Absolutely, from a context point, for those, especially for someone like myself that has been involved in delivering projects on the technical side of things and construction side of things and these are like mega projects. There's that tendency to want to replicate the same culture in a different climb, and it's not going to work that way. It's one of the things I found out in the last 7 years that I've been trying to drive some of my initiatives in sub-Saharan Africa, and it's basically understanding the context, the institutional cultures that we have that are prevalent to how things are done, and adapting the principles to suit basically it's more like a cocktail of all these the principles we have, or ensuring that it's the best fit. It's essentially having something that works in the context of sub-Saharan Africa. Essentially, that's it, and that's what I found out in this program. Absolutely. To be fair, one of the key things on this program, I'll say, is that I've been blown away at the level of information that I've had to. I guess I wasn't warned appropriately before I got on the program, But there's been a lot of information, and there's also been a lot of steep learning. There's certain things, in terms of I'll give an example. the modeling as well, things that have to do with the modeling and the layers of the layers of information and the layers of outcome in terms of the sensitivity of how all of these things impact, and the nuances of the whole process, from concept, and then approaching finance and then closure, and then moving on to post financing and all of the different key strategic phases that we've been taught to go through. So for me, it's more like having what you call like a framework, and I think that's the most important thing, where once you have the framework, the different elements within that framework that you need to tick off, more like a check sheet that shows that this is a serious project. It's not just a dream that you have somewhere. And one of the things that the program has actually even taught me is that there's nothing wrong in having dreams, but you also need to be very realistic about the fact that what the framework is there for is to ensure that you're not wasting your time unnecessarily. You're able to then assess and evaluate if this is bankable. And I think one of the unlearnings that I've had to do personally is basically changing the concept of bankability that I had before approaching the program. I have a different mindset to that right now. Okay, so I can't remember who I mentioned it to. Maybe it must have been Jane herself, but one of the key things I was impressed with was I think it's the quality of the portal itself, the learning portal. So I remember, when I did my executive program at the London School of Economics just at the start of COVID, and we had to pivot from live class sessions into a kind of hybrid session. So everything had to go online. But that was a couple of months before the time. And of course, I know things would have been developed since then, but I was pretty much impressed at the quality of the portal, the interface. You would easily find the information you want, and you would easily be able to go through your learnings, if it's the way it's sequenced there, and the quality of the materials as well. It's for someone who is basically I'll call myself as a novice in terms of finance. I could hold a discussion, but not at the level I would be able to do now because of the certain level of information that I have and the exposure that I have with regards to the bank. I think that's one of the key things that has stood out for me, and and as well within the portal as well, the fact that there are questions at different sessions that basically, and I can say some of those questions are really technical questions. You have to have gone through the material to be able to answer those questions. And I also like the idea of the interactive platform that we have when we're engaging. It's the first time I'm seeing that as well, where we're engaging during the live sessions as well. I've used other platforms, so I think that is also something that I found really very interesting. But in all, I would say that I've been really very impressed. As a matter of fact, if there's anything that I would have something negative to say, I would say that the materials that we have to go through is quite a lot. But yeah, that's a good thing. You can't have too much information, I guess. As a matter of fact, I'm not even sure why we don't even have more people on the program, because essentially, when you look at the different, the challenges we have, in Africa from an infrastructural point of view, I think every ministry, department, and agency, really should be looking at this, because the biggest challenge we actually have, as I say, like Mr. Femi always says, is not necessarily the lack of funding, but it's the lack of proper structuring of the project, such that it's able to pass through that funnel of closure and looking at the analysis. So for me, anyone that is an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur like myself really should be going through this, even if you're not going to be knee deep in the financial part of putting together your project. But in terms of understanding the fundamentals of how the structure of the project, the key things we need to be looking at, if you're within the C-suite or within the management part of the organization, I think everyone really should be going through this program. It's a program that equips you with that information to be able to not just advise, but also implement and execute as well.